We'll go ahead and get started. So this talk's Amazon Web Services for the .NET developer. And first of all, welcome to CodeStock. We're different this year in that this is the opening, or sort of opening. I guess the official opening is at 5 or something like that. But we have to thank our sponsors. I think each session is sponsored different. Before we get started, if this is your idea of a good time, you're probably in the wrong session. Amazon Web Services does do quite a bit for targeting, say, sort of the Linux or Unix audience, but that's not going to be the focus of this session. We'll talk about it a little bit and kind of dance around it, but the reason I think this session is interesting is, as a primarily Microsoft dev myself, they've done some interesting things as of late to make it a little more approachable or appealing to the Microsoft dev. So we'll talk about that some. So sort of our agenda, we'll go through a brief introduction, then we'll talk about Amazon Web Services. In our initial poll, there wasn't a lot of former experience, so we'll spend some time there so you get sort of an understanding of what it is, how it compares to some of the other types of clouds. I won't go a lot into that, but if you want sort of more of a holistic picture, if you come to this session as well as my one at 12:30, where we'll talk about Azure, you'll sort of get a good balance between the two. Another question that came up at the beginning is how much pros and cons contrasting will I do between the two clouds? The answer is a little bit, but not a lot. And that's due to the differences in the structure and the target. We'll then walk through machines, basically how you would set up your first machine as a Windows dev in Azure or Amazon. And the reason there is that it's actually much easier than it used to be, and I want to sort of walk through how you do that and how painless actually it can be. Application walkthroughs and then some questions. And I really want to spend, hopefully we'll spend a lot of time on questions and answers if you have that so you don't feel lost. Brief introduction. I work for a company, and I'm paid by a company called Planet Technologies out of Washington, D.C., so that Washington, D.C. area. We are a Microsoft Gold certified partner. We've been federal partner of the year for like 4 years running, things like that, lots of stuff. Been with them for a little over 10 years now. Most of my time with them has been working with the Microsoft this esoteric product called the Microsoft Provisioning System, which most people don't know. It's a system targeting ISPs and telcos, sort of the large scale. If you want to do offers in Microsoft Hosted Exchange or IS to your customers, you are Time Warner, like the Roadrunner product, or AOL, Telecom Italia, or companies of that scale. So I've been working sort of worldwide on that. I spent the last 3 years at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Started off assisting their IT group on a couple of projects that have now moved into the Computer Science Research Group. And I've spent about 1.5 years now there as a member of the Computer Science Research Group, specifically working on a project that's funded and targeted at marrying that, or looking at where the cloud computing as it fits slides into our mission as an HPC center. How do we apply that to the technical computing space? There's sort of a broad space there and a lot of questions and issues we're dealing with. That's sort of where I am and how I've been. I am traditionally a Microsoft dev, which puts me a little bit at odds with the group that I'm working with, but I say it builds character. It's been interesting. It's been good. So, AWS products. We're going to spend a good bit of time here. So, I'm not going to spend a lot of time about what is the cloud. I actually don't want to spend any time about what is the cloud. We need to get past that. So I'll start by saying Amazon Web Services is an IaaS product, or at least as it stands today. They're blurring the lines with some of their products. So they're taking a step towards PaaS, and the Microsoft folks are taking a step towards IaaS. So if you came back a year from now, I expect the talks would be much more, the pro-cons between them will be a lot clearer to talk about because they're going to sort of overlap and merge there, or compete with each other, depending on how you want to look at it. They are currently an IaaS platform, so in many ways it's targeted at the infrastructure folks. If you need a server, you need networking, or networking for your servers, Amazon's your platform to go. You have a very high level of control. You can interact with things. It's just like a virtual machine you have anywhere else. If you're comfortable at all with virtual dedicated servers, if you use an outsourced company, you use, obviously you can get dedicated servers, you can get shared servers, and a lot of companies are offering virtual dedicated. Amazon EC2 is just like that in many ways. Obviously there's other features. So their first offering is EC2 or Elastic Compute Cloud. That's what we were just talking about. You choose an instance type. They've got a catalog of different machine images, and they've got you can create your own machine image. It's essentially what they call an AMI, or Amazon Machine Image. If you've done anything with virtualization, it's essentially your VHD or your virtual hard disk plus your config file sort of bundled into one and then sysprepped, to use a Windows term. It's sort of that package by which you can then deploy a new image. So it's not just the VHD, it's not just the config file, it's sort of the bundle. But you can boot from those. That's where you start from. So you pick those. They've historically targeted the Linux platform, partially because of cost. It's very easy. They've deployed many of them. Their catalog is heavy on the Linux side. So if you go there and you want to look at the shared images, you'll see many more of those than you will at the Windows side, mostly because of licensing. Their Elastic MapReduce product. Anybody play with Hadoop? MapReduce? So MapReduce is a mechanism for doing large-scale data processing. And by large scale, we're talking gigs to terabytes. And it's very commonly used by sort of the large internet properties for generating search indices and things like that. They have, and this is one of their steps towards the PaaS platform. So they've taken, and they saw so many people actually running Hadoop or the MapReduce platform on their EC2 product that they actually systematized it. And they put together a platform tool called MapReduce, Elastic MapReduce, where you can bundle your code, upload it in a certain way, and they will actually handle all the scaling out and bundling. You simply say, here's my data, here's my code, and I want you to run it on 15 images or 15 machines. And that's sort of bundling. Auto scaling is something that, so anytime anybody talks about the cloud, they talk about this elastic nature. You can scale up when your traffic goes up, you can scale down when it goes down, and that's great, and it's true, sort of. Up until recently, the vendors themselves have not provided tools to do that. So while you can do it, there's no automaticness to it, particularly at the IaaS level. Recently, and by recently, within the last handful of months, Amazon's released a product called CloudWatch, which is over here. And that is their monitoring features. So you can actually, when you start up an image, you can check CloudWatch and say, I want you to monitor sort of key things like processor utilization, things like that. And a side feature of that is you can check a box that says, when my processor on all of my nodes averages over 80% for 5 minutes, I want you to spin up a new instance. And you give it a path to your instance, and they will automatically do that. There are and have been third-party tools that will do that that have been doing it for a long time. Companies like RightScale and things like that would fit that bucket. And generally, their charge model is something, so say an Amazon image costs you 10 cents an hour or 8 cents an hour. Some of those companies will simply up that by a couple of pennies an hour, and that's how they do their pricing. So we pay RightScale 10 cents an hour, and they'll add their services on top of Amazon and give you a single bill. CloudFront is their CDN service, so Content Distribution Network. If you're not playing in the cloud, but you're doing large websites, I'd encourage you to look at most of the cloud vendors offer a CDN. It's an easy way for non-rich people to have CDN platforms. So if you're familiar with the big ones like Akamai and stuff, they're great, but the upfront investment's huge. The cloud vendors, Amazon, Microsoft, Rackspace, do a lot of work with Rackspace, have some great CDN options you can get into very inexpensively, so it's very interesting in that. SimpleDB, we mentioned briefly in the pre-talk, was their horizontally scalable, schema-less table structure. Think